Time today, we will be giving you telephone numbers set up by the Defense Department for family members who want more information. These are specific numbers for each of the 4 branches of service, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. We'll be posting them at the top of the hour. Right now, that's it at News Channel 5. Back to CBS.
You're watching CBS News' continuing coverage of Showdown in the Gulf. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here are Harry Smith and Paula Zahn.
And good morning, everybody. Welcome back.
We've got the latest headlines here this morning as we continue our coverage of Operation Desert Storm. Congressional leaders meet with the president. America's first combat losses are confirmed. Allied planes launch 1,000 raids with no let-up in sight. And Iraq says it will fight to the last child. The Congress that so passionately debated combat in the Gulf is now behind the president and the troops after meeting with President Bush. House Speaker Thomas Foley spoke with reporters.
Obviously, there is satisfaction that there has been great success with a minimal loss of life.
The Pentagon this morning confirmed the first American losses in Operation Desert Storm. 1 man dead, 1 plane or Navy or Marine F-18 confirmed shot down, and another plane damaged. So far, Allied air power has launched more than 1,000 sorties against targets in Iraq and Kuwait. The Pentagon says Iraqi anti-aircraft sites and military command and control facilities have been heavily damaged. And at a briefing, Defense Secretary Dick Cheney said they'll hit the same targets again if they have to.
The operation will continue until we achieve our objectives of forcing Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait and implementing the United Nations Security Council resolutions.
The first weapons to fall from the Iraqi skies were Tomahawk cruise missiles, 100 of them launched from the U.S. Navy ships in the Persian Gulf. Their performance has won high praise from U.S. defense officials. On the ground, refineries on both sides of the border are burning. One in northern Saudi Arabia was hit by artillery fire from Iraqi guns in Kuwait. In Iraq, a refinery near Baghdad is also reported hit. But there is still defiance in Iraq, with that country's ambassador to Great Britain promising no surrender.
Until the last children in our country, we will defend our country bravely. We will defend the land of prophets.
The Soviet ambassador to Iraq reportedly met with Saddam Hussein in his Baghdad bunker. He is said to have delivered a message from Mikhail Gorbachev telling Saddam to get out of Kuwait. We have no official confirmation of that meeting.
And right now we're going to go back to the White House, where Randall Pinkston is standing by with more. Good morning again, Randall. What's happening there?
Good morning, Paula. For about an hour, President Bush met with congressional leaders, his first face-to-face meeting with those leaders since the Operation Desert Storm was launched last night. Among those present, Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, House Speaker Thomas Foley, and the minority leaders in the respective chambers, Dole in the Senate and Michael in the House. Of course, as you know, last weekend there was a vigorous debate on Capitol Hill about whether or not President Bush should be authorized to use force. That debate having been settled, all of the leaders, including those who voted against President Bush, are now rallying around Mr. Bush and his decision to use force in the Gulf. In fact, there was quite a lot of praise for the president and his military strategists for the early success of Operation Desert Storm, and also a lot of thanks that casualties so far have been relatively few. And there was also some surprise that Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein has not yet mounted a more vigorous defense.
Where was this guy? Where was Saddam Hussein? He must have been on vacation or asleep, because there was no response. And maybe he didn't think we would do it. Maybe he didn't think there was a resolve. But in my view, that was settled last Saturday in the Congress of the United States. But there was a feeling of satisfaction about the punishment inflicted, not on innocent civilians, but on strategic targets.
While expressing concern that our casualties be kept low, Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell also noted that there are civilians who are involved and he expressed the hopes and the prayers of everyone that innocent civilian casualties can also be minimized. Later today, both houses will be briefed by Department of Defense officials, the House of Representatives at 4:30, the Senate at 5:30, and both houses also plan to pass resolutions supporting President Bush. I would expect that they will be unanimous resolutions, total support for Operation Desert Storm and the decision the president has made. Paula?
Randall, do you know if the president plans to address the American people again today, at any point of the day?
We believe that the president will be addressing the American people at some point later today. He has a relatively full schedule. As you know, he is presently attending religious services at the Fort Myer Chapel in Virginia. When he returns from there, there will be the normal briefing by White House Press Secretary Marlin Fitzwater. There's a 3 o'clock cabinet meeting, and then there's an opening later in the afternoon. We anticipate that we will hear something from President Bush as he gives us his appraisal of the early operation and what at this point appears to be a pretty successful operation of our military forces.
Okay, thank you. Randall Pinkston reporting from outside the White House this morning.
We've been busy reporting a lot from Washington and around the globe, from Amman, Jordan, and from Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. And we want to go to Denver right now and check in with Bob McNamara. Bob, can you hear me all right?
Morning, Harry. It's just after 9 o'clock here in Denver. The rush hour has just wound down. Some people are still waking up. The radio talk shows are abuzz with all the talk of war. The schools are opening as usual. Federal, state, and local offices are also opening. It's another day, but with a big difference. Interesting to note that this morning, for two highly competitive newspapers that seldom agree on anything, they both have the same headline this morning. Some developments overnight to tell you about. There were two bomb scares here. One at the AT&T technical headquarters downtown. That was because of a suspicious briefcase, and that turned out to be false. The other, a bit more ominous, at the Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant outside the city. A briefcase also involved there, but also a false alarm. All over Denver today, there is a heightened state of security at federal buildings, especially military installations, not just in Denver, but also Colorado Springs and in other parts of Colorado. There's also a heightened state of alert at Fitzsimmons Army Hospital. At Stapleton Airport, bags, luggage are being checked more closely than ever before, and as a result, some planes are leaving up to a half hour late. Unattended cars are being towed, and for the first time in a long time, only ticketed passengers are being allowed down the concourses for security measures. Denver's mayor, late last night, activated the Emergency Preparedness Office. He placed all city employees on alert, especially to deal with any emergency, and particularly any potential acts of terrorism. But everywhere here again today, people will be watching the news, especially those with relatives in the Gulf. They call themselves MASH, Mothers Against Saddam Hussein. And last night they gathered in a church to talk of war and worry about their sons. Susan Huff has a son serving in Saudi Arabia.
I think it's a natural thing that every mother thinks of. The prayer for the son that's over there, his safety. The prayer that since it has erupted, that it will soon be over.
Sue Elliott has two sons serving in the Gulf.
You just have to wait and see what happens. I hate to get too optimistic. I try and be as positive as I can. And we'll just have to see.
The mothers have been meeting weekly, supporting each other in the face of impending war. Now they say they'll gather every night to pray for peace. Today there will be more peace rallies throughout the Denver metro area, and there is a scheduled downtown rally at noon in support of President Bush. Harry?
Bob McNamara reporting from Denver. Thank you so much.
And right now we're going to check in with Scott Pelley, who is just back from a tour of the Iraqi-Kuwaiti border. Can you hear us now, Scott? And can you tell us what you saw then?
Yes, I will, but first let me tell you what's happening here in Saudi Arabia as we speak. We just watched 4 fighter planes take off from an air base near where we are standing now. It would appear from all indications tonight that Saddam Hussein is in for another punishing evening of Allied air assaults. We are told that at a central Saudi Arabian air base, a very large air base, a large number of aircraft departed from there recently. Very much like the beginning of the war last night, watching these planes take off one after another in a very short period of time. Earlier today, I took a 200-mile tour of the Kuwaiti-Saudi border to see how the armored forces were getting along. You'll recall, of course, that so far this war has been only an air war, and the ground units have not been called into action. Late this afternoon, as the sun was setting, we could see American, British, and Saudi armored forces massing on the border. Some tanks were rolling north as the sun set. We do not know whether they will be stopping short of the border. But there was one very clear indication that they are planning to move ahead soon. There was an almost endless convoy of large fuel trucks heading into the area. Paula?
Thank you, Scott. Right now, General Alexander Haig joins us for his assessment of what we see going on in the Gulf. Former Secretary of State, of course. If you will, give us your reaction to what Scott just mentioned about what could be a very punishing second night of American air attacks.
Well, I think even the most optimistic have been somewhat surprised by the paucity of Iraqi response to the coalition strikes. I understand that helicopters are running rather free at low level over the battlefield. That is coalition helicopters. This suggests both a paralysis of command and control and a severe paucity of response capability. And it means that it will be corrected perhaps in the hours and days ahead, but I think the outcome is inevitable in the long run.
How well have our sophisticated weapons systems performed in your judgment?
Well, clearly, thus far, very, very well. The cruise missiles were, I think, a very happy surprise to the Pentagon because they were untested in battle. The deconfliction of a multiplicity of aircraft and types, both carrier-based, heavy B-52s, and our fighter and fighter-bomber aircraft is, I think, a demonstration of the professionalism, the detailed planning that went into this operation. And I think it's thus far been very successful. I don't think the war's yet over, as some have tend to conclude, and we have to be very, very careful about being excessively optimistic, as Dick Cheney said this morning.
He really did set a cautionary tone during his briefing at the Pentagon this morning, and I don't even know if it's worthwhile speculating about, but is it worth thinking that this may be a shorter war than a longer war?
Well, I've said that from day one in August, that it would be a matter of weeks and not months. I don't think just simply days, unless there's a sudden crack in the overall morale of the Iraqi forces, which we cannot discount. This could happen with this kind of devastating onslaught.
At the same time, we saw pictures from Iraqi TV of Saddam Hussein being regaled by his troops, and we have no idea where that location was or what experience or circumstances.
Or when it was filmed.
Circumstances under when those pictures or how they were taken. At the same time, there's a kind of other sort of secondary or even tertiary storyline going around this morning that maybe he is holding back forces, and that he has scattered so many forces to the wind that he'll be able to come back and hit us with a punch that we might not expect after having been able to go in there so easily during this first 16 or 17 hours or so.
Well, you can't discount this. After all, thus far it's been strictly an air operation. But I noted with satisfaction that the targeting plan included the main reserves, the Republican Guards, which are essentially in southern Iraq and northern Kuwait. And I think the difference between this, we tend to look at Vietnam as our model. But this is an entirely different situation. We have flat, open country where air power can do devastating work, and if defenses are not effective, then they're going to have a free run, and it's really a question of time and additional attrition before the other side has to throw in the towel.
What can you you tell us about the reports that some of the best artillery that the Iraqis have is buried in these deep bunkers that really would be not so vulnerable to a first attack?
Well, that's true. It depends on the weight of the bombs. If you use B-52s, there are very few bunkers that can withstand that kind of heavy weight of firepower. But if you're using a fighter bomber, F-16 or 15s, it may be that they could withstand it.
General Haig, we thank you so much for taking the time to come by and visit with us today.
Thank you, Harry. Stay well.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, General. Before we bring you up to date on the headlines, we're going to go back to a picture now of Saddam Hussein. We're not sure once again when these pictures were taken, where they were taken. Saddam Hussein kneeling in prayer. This also was shown on Iraqi television overnight. I don't think we have any idea of who these people surrounding him are at this point.
Or any real indication of what part of the country these pictures were taken in, if in fact these pictures were taken this morning. Although that seems to be the indication that they in fact were. As we mentioned before, there was not much to be seen of Saddam Hussein for about 24 hours, a day or so preceding, and the dozen or so hours immediately after the bombing of Baghdad began.
Right now, though, we will bring you up to date on the headlines as nightfall approaches in Kuwait. The United States promises to keep it up, hitting Iraq hard from the air. President Bush says he's pleased with the war effort and the progress so far. One U.S. Navy flyer is confirmed killed, but war news gives world financial markets a big boost. For his part, Saddam Hussein remains defiant. As we showed you earlier, Hussein appeared on Iraqi television a short while ago. We're not sure exactly when these pictures were taken, though, sharing on his troops. That's about all we can tell you about these pictures at this point. President Bush traveling to church this morning, along with First Lady Bush and the Reverend Billy Graham at a meeting with congressional leaders earlier. Prayer was on the president's mind.
I feel so strongly about our troops over there. Certainly I feel that way about them, and I feel that way about the innocents who might get caught up in this conflict. So I think it's fair to say there's a lot of prayer going on both here on the Capitol Hill and across this whole country. And it'll be that way until this is concluded.
So far, the Gulf War appears to be one-sided, with the U.S. employing sophisticated weapons like Tomahawk cruise missiles and enjoying an enormous technical edge. It appears that Wall Street likes what it sees. The Dow Jones average jumped nearly 90 points in the first hour of trading before a slight retreat. And around the world, oil prices are plummeting.
We want to go back to Washington right now and check in with the French ambassador to the United Nations, Jacques Andréane. Good morning and good day to you, sir.
Good morning.
First off, we know that just over 24 hours ago or so, the French Parliament voted to allow French forces to be used in the combat in the Persian Gulf and the assault against Iraq. Can you give us any more information this morning as to how your forces are faring so far?
Well, as you said, the Parliament gave this authorization yesterday by a heavy vote. It was more than 500 votes for and 40 against. And the President addressed the nation, explaining why it had been necessary to recourse to force and asking the nation to be united around our armed forces. And early this morning, 12 fighter bombers, the Jaguar of the French Air Force, took part in the operations against the Iraqi forces in Kuwait. And apparently the operation was successful, and while some of our aircrafts were
damaged, I guess.
Well, damage was very slightly, very slightly. It was an attack on against an airfield apparently, and at very low altitude to destroy the runways, and it was a dangerous operation, and they nearly they escaped by a thin margin. But everything seemed to have been all right.
Mr. Ambassador, we saw pictures and heard from Perez de Cuellar last night at the United Nations, and it seemed to be almost an attitude of some resignation as the assault began. Do you have any knowledge of any reconvening of the Security Council or any further diplomatic forays at this hour?
I wouldn't say, no, not at this stage. We are in a completely different game now, and God knows that we have been trying until the last moment to see whether something could be done for peace, and on the last day, right to the hour of the deadline, our diplomacy tried in the Security Council to obtain from the Security Council the last appeal for peace, and we really tried up to the last minute. But our president had made it very clear that up to the deadline, everything should be tried for peace. After the deadline, we were in another phase, the phase of military operation. Very sadly, we drew this conclusion, and now this military phase has to run through, and we don't expect any diplomatic initiatives until the end of this military operation.
Do you have any indication, and I'm not even sure if you've had an opportunity to communicate with your colleagues back in France today, what the reaction has been throughout the country to the start of the war and to the what looks to have been successful sorties of American, British, and French air incursions into Baghdad and into Iraq?
I think the reaction will have been that we deplore that we had to do it, but we know that we had to do it, and we're happy that it seems to be developing quite well from the military point of view. And we hope it will be short, and we are sure it will lead to the aim, which is the evacuation of Kuwait.
As we are in the heat of battle right now, at what point again does a diplomatic opportunity rise again? At what time does the diplomatic window reopen?
Well, I would say as soon as Kuwait is in fact evacuated, rid of Iraqi forces, or at the point where politically the Iraqi leadership declares that it's finished and that they cease the combat, and they agree to withdraw their forces from Kuwait. From that time, either forceful evacuation completed or clear statements that they indeed are recognize their defeat and are evacuating. From that point, we can start again a diplomatic initiative. But for the time being, this is not the case.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Jacques Andriani joining us. We'll be right back.
We are now some 16 hours into Desert Storm right now, and we're going to check in with Morley Safer to get a better idea of what this action has involved. Good morning again.
Thank you, Paula. Here in the studio is Amos Ilon, who's, I guess fair to say, one of the most distinguished Israeli journalists, historians, and in the context of Israeli politics, can fairly be called a dove. What almost would be the effect of a genuinely degrading defeat of Saddam Hussein? What would be the effect on the West Bank? Here was the new Saladin.
Well, it depends who you are talking about. If you are talking about the PLO in Tunis, the PLO outside the occupied territories, why, it's again been demonstrated that the PLO never loses an opportunity to miss a chance. And in this case, it was more than missing a chance. In this case, by identifying themselves with the murderous regime in Baghdad and with Saddam Hussein, they have really done their own people, the Palestinians, at a terrible disservice, both from a political point of view and from a moral point of view. And I, for one, would devoutly wish that this leadership that we've seen so far would disappear from the scene. But
this is the Palestinian leadership.
Yeah, the PLO. But this leaves the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian people are a people, and I don't believe it would be right to punish them for the crimes of their faraway leaders, these fat cat bureaucrats that were running the PLO from luxury hotels all over the world and private jets, etc., etc. The Palestinian people on the West Bank, on the occupied Gaza Strip, have a real cause. They are a nation. Many of them speaking to Israeli peace activists. There have been intensive contacts over the years between members of the Labour Party, between members of the mass Peace Now movement, and Palestinian leaders on the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. And over the years, a dialogue has developed between them, stipulating the establishment of a Palestinian autonomy in the first stage and an independent Palestinian state in the latter stage.
But what would be the immediate effect? I'm talking about this week, this weekend as it approaches. Do you think it will inflame the Intifada? Will they come out into the streets over this combined devil-ridden allied incursion into the Arab world?
When I left Jerusalem 3 days ago, I deliberately left my crystal ball there. But I don't think that there's going to be much violence in the West Bank if the Iraqi military machine is really being liquidated as it seems at the moment. I'm sure that the Palestinians on the West Bank will be in a state of shock and confusion and will start calculating their next move, and I should hope that their next move would be to meet those Israelis who are ready to deal with them on a historical compromise that would put an end to this war after so many centuries, after so many decades of violence.
From your point of view, you being no friend of Shamir or the Shamir government, are you concerned that this, in fact, this massive use of force and apparently effective use of force will spur them on to an even harder line?
There is a danger, of course, that Mr. Shamir and the Israeli right wing would conclude that an American victory in the Gulf finishes the Palestinian problem. But I don't think you can bomb away the Palestinian problem. The Palestinian problem is a real problem. Here are two national movements clashing over possession of the same piece of real estate. And the only solution in my mind, and I'm sure Mr. Shamir will understand this in the future, though I'm afraid in the distant future only. The only solution in my mind is that when two national movements, two rights, two kinds of justice, two mirror images in fact, clash over possession of the same piece of real estate, that piece of real estate should be divided and partitioned between them. It's the only solution that would be both morally just and politically feasible in the long run.
But doesn't this defeat, if it is indeed a defeat of Saddam Hussein, further degrade and depress whatever hopes there were within the movement to come to some kind of terms? Yet another Arab defeat, yet another rout.
Well, it's not an Arab defeat. After all, the majority of Arabs in the Middle East have fortunately joined the American coalition. Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, these are the important countries. Egypt is the heart of the Arab world. Egypt has already made peace with Israel, and I would devoutly hope now that Syria would be next, and Jordan and the Palestinians.
Does it surprise you that Israel has stayed out of this fight?
I'm happy that it stayed out of the fight because nothing good could be gained out of this. When I spoke to my wife half an hour ago, she said that Jerusalem was peaceful and that they were all hoping that perhaps now a new beginning would be made in what is known by the diplomats as the peace process.
How many times have we heard that before, Amos?
Yes, we've heard this before, but if we face the Palestinian problem now as generous victors, I think there's a chance now, for the first time perhaps, to arrive at a historical compromise between these two desperately unhappy people, these paralyzed people by their history and by the suffering they have to go through.
Thank you very much.
Morley, thank you.
And for those of you just joining us, we'd like to bring you up to date on the headlines at this hour. Allied troops are reported missing on the border of Kuwait, and we'll have that story for you right after we take this short pause. We'll be right back.
You're watching CBS News continuing coverage of Showdown in the Gulf. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here are Harry Smith and Paula Zahn.
Right now, we'd like to bring you up to date on the headlines at this hour. Allied troops are reported massing on the border of Kuwait. Saddam Hussein remains defiant in the face of overwhelming Allied air power. In Washington, the mood is one of resolve and unity, and the number of air attacks in the Gulf could pass 2,000 by day's end. The ground war to liberate Kuwait seems about to begin. CBS News correspondent Scott Pelley has learned that Allied ground forces are massing along the border, apparently to drive out the Iraqi invaders. Meanwhile, Saddam Hussein is said to have toured the streets of Baghdad after a night of heavy aerial bombardment from Allied planes and missiles. The Soviet ambassador to Iraq reportedly visited Saddam to give him a note from Mikhail Gorbachev demanding that Iraq get out of Kuwait. But Iraq's ambassador to Great Britain says his country will fight to the last child. In this country, President Bush, members of his cabinet, and the Reverend Billy Graham attended church this morning. This while a once divided Congress throws its support to the president and the war effort.
We hope that the outcome is swift and with the minimum of damage and loss of life, and we will join in full support of the men and women of our armed forces who are displaying such courage and skill.
The number of air sorties against targets in Iraq and Kuwait has now passed the 1,000 mark, with a promise from the Pentagon there are more to come, and the pilots who carry out those sorties have been speaking with reporters.
When he blew up, I could see a piece of the airplane blowing up. Obviously, it was at night. I couldn't see if a parachute or anything like that. It was a huge fireball. I don't anticipate anybody getting out of that. It could have happened.
Even before the first planes took off against Iraq, about 100 Tomahawk missiles struck their targets, much to the delight of the Pentagon. And in an oil-rich part of the world, oil is a victim. Iraqi artillery hit a refinery in northern Saudi Arabia, and 2 refineries are now reported burning near the Iraqi capital of Baghdad after Allied airstrikes.
That's headlines for right now. We are joined by General George Christ, who was Marine General and commander of our forces in that part of the world for a long, long time, a CBS News consultant. We've had conversation after conversation after conversation about what this war might look like, and finally it has come to pass. Thank you for coming by and joining us again. One of the things I was struck by was the incredible array of weaponry that was deployed. We heard in the briefing in the Pentagon this morning the Tomahawk missiles and every kind of jet down to Apache helicopters. Has this taken the kind of shape that you anticipated it might?
It has, and I think the thing, Harry, that's remarkable about this is we have at least 5 nations in the air. We've got over 1,000 sorties going in from all of the services, and there's one air commander putting it all together, so that all the decisions are being made by one U.S. air commander to put all this firepower in there. I believe that's unprecedented. It is the joint system finally coming to fruition in combat. It's new, and it's really quite remarkable.
Because that was one of the problems that we have talked about time and time again, is the kind of a command and control apparatus that would have to be in place in order to bring all these disparate forces together.
Command and control is clearly disappeared, at least in the air, as a problem. Now, Harry, there's going to be a ground portion of this thing. The Secretary talked, as you know, about the air portion. So that assumes a ground portion. In many senses, the ground attack has actually begun. We have airplanes that support ground troops, these old slow A-10s that are tank killers, Apache helicopters that also support ground troops. The F-16 aircraft is up. The French Jaguar, which again is an old, slow but ground attack airplane, they're going in on those Iraqi troops in Kuwait, starting to hit them and soften them up. You've already heard about the B-52s beginning to strike on units up there. So in many senses now, while the air war is going on over Iraq, the ground war has just begun.
One of the concerns that you have voiced time and time again was about the idea that we may not really be ready at this point for that ground war, that while the aircraft have been in place, and while we've got 6 aircraft carriers in that neck of the woods, that the air assault could go on, but maybe we don't have all the tanks we want. Maybe we don't have all those M1s that have been coming in from Europe down on the ground and ready to roll. And we're hearing, even at this moment, that troops are headed north. Are we putting the cart before the horse here a little bit?
Well, I don't think we are quite ready to go on the ground. I don't think the 1st and 3rd, the big armored divisions, are in position.
When would we be ready?
They're probably moving them as fast as they can right now. The troop movements that you hear going north are those forces going forward. Now, we heard Colin Powell talk about time. A lot of weight is being put on the air attack, the effectiveness of the air attack, to soften those targets up. I don't think they're going to move, one, until, of course, the troops are in position, but also until they have a very good feel that those troops in Kuwait have really been beat up. And I think it's kind of remarkable that we've had these kinds of airplanes flying over a battlefield, a tactical battlefield, in daylight, and yet we're not seeing these kind of losses that we should see from his guns. I don't understand it, but it may say something about the morale of those troops down on that ground under air attack that they've never experienced yet.
And the effectiveness of the sorties that have gone against them.
Exactly right.
Yeah, General, thank you so much.
Thank you, General. We've talked also this morning an awful lot about terrorism and people's fear of that all over the country. We talked with the head of DFW's airport down there in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, and also met with the commissioner of the police force here, Lee Brown. Right now we're going to go to Rita Braver, who has some more information on just what sort of security precautions are being put in place now. Good morning, Rita.
Good morning, Paula. Well, the FAA will say publicly only that the nation's airports are at their highest level of security. And that really means that when you go to the airport, what you should expect is not to be allowed to have curbside check-in. You will not be allowed, if you are accompanying a passenger, to go beyond the security area. Expect surveillance. There will be sort of behind-the-scenes kind of surveillance. There will be undercover people around the airports. They will be watching for profiles, but you can expect the same kind of questioning in some cases before you get on an airplane that has been used by El Al all over the world, and certainly by some of the European airports. They may ask you why you're going, where you're going, did anybody give you a strange package, and it will take a long time in some cases to actually get on an airplane. You should expect delays.
The average traveler hearing about these kind of restrictions probably is terrified. Is it warranted?
Well, I don't have a sense that there is any specific kind of targeting. I have been talking to people in the airline industry, in the FBI, in the FAA for a week now, and there is no information on specific targets. But what is really happening is a sense of prudence, and as one FBI official told me yesterday, an attempt to create a climate of hostility. This person says we want people to realize that they are not going to get through, and really this is done to give passengers confidence more than it is to scare them, I think, and to let them know that they will be safe. However, it is true that a lot of people are canceling travel, and I'm being told that some businesses, for example, are canceling not only foreign travel but domestic travel for their people.
Earlier this morning, too, we talked about specific threats that had been made here in New York City, and how the number of calls coming into the police department have probably quintupled almost. Can you give us any idea of what they are experiencing in the district at this point?
Well, in the district there is a huge crackdown on security. There are some streets out front of the State Department, for example, where people cannot drive. There are no White House tours. Those have been canceled. State Department tours have been canceled. You always hesitate to talk about this because obviously what everyone is trying to avoid is the crank call, the nut who decides, oh, well, you know, I just like to call in and scare somebody. So there is an effort not to publicize this, but there is genuine security. Traffic was stopped up on one of the main streets, Independence Avenue, as guards at government parking lots this morning checked not only passengers, but they were actually looking inside of engines. At the White House, it is extremely difficult to come into that building, as well as in the Capitol. And what people seem to be worried about in this country in terms of terrorism are two different things. One is terrorist cells that may have been put in place by the Iraqis and the many terrorists who are known to have volunteered their services to Saddam Hussein. And in addition, there is concern about the zealot, the person who may be out there and decide, these are my people, I need to make my mark, I need to do something to help them out. At the end of last month in New Jersey, a man was actually arrested. He was, interestingly enough, a person who was a naturalized American citizen who was born in Kuwait. But he was arrested after he threatened in an FBI undercover situation to attack President Bush, Secretary of State Baker, and other officials. These are the kinds of people that are really scary to the government because lots of times they operate just suddenly an idea pops into their mind and they go out and do something, and there's not a whole lot you can guard against them. I also want to point out that one of the terrorism experts we talked to yesterday said, you know, you have a lot greater chance of hurting yourself slipping in a bathtub than you do of being a victim of terrorism in this country.
All right, thanks, Rita. We'll be checking in with her later on this afternoon.
And Susan Spencer joins us now. We did a little update this morning on a real spontaneous response, it seems, from a lot of people to
an awful lot of people.
The news last night.
You know, it's been clear for days, ever since the debate over the weekend, especially that Americans have very, very mixed feelings about the Gulf involvement. And in Boston today, those feelings really did spill over into the streets. A crowd estimated at somewhere around 500 anti-war demonstrators gathered at the John F. Kennedy Federal Center shouting their opposition to military action. Dozens of police wearing full riot gear were determined not to let them enter the building, which is what they were trying to do. And things got rather tense when the big massive demonstrators kept pushing against the barricades outside. As the protesters continued, the police ended up, as you see, bodily carrying people off. We are told that at least 19 people were arrested. And that protest at the Federal Center in Boston is still underway at this hour. One, I suspect, of many today.
Yeah, I was home last night watching all the coverage, and as I was about to take a nap for an hour or so, I could hear chanting just a block away down Broadway.
There were, I think, several thousand people at the United Nations also last night, and there were some problems there.
It's a real sort of a spontaneous reaction on that level, and I think there's a lot of anxiety still in this country, even as we're, how many, 14, 15, 16 odd hours into this, about what's going on, and a lot of sort of personal second guessing and hopefulness
and appropriate anxiety at this point. You know, we know a lot, but we don't know all that much, and people feel very deeply about whether or not this is not so much, I don't think, whether they support the troops. There doesn't seem to be any question about that, but larger issues that they're very confused about, I think, at this point.
And that's one of the things that the terrible lessons of war, the lessons that people our age and older learned from Vietnam was there wasn't a separation made between U.S. policy and the people who were carrying it out. And people who came home from that war were terribly punished because of the accident of their own circumstances. And even in the people who are protesting against the war that we're hearing from, there's great support and love and concern for the hundreds of thousands of men and women who are over in the Persian Gulf and in Saudi Arabia this week.
I think that may be one lesson of Vietnam that we won't forget.
It's coming up on 16 minutes before the hour, and I'm not quite sure where we're headed.
I think we're going to take the time now to bring people up to date on the headlines. Thanks, Susan. One U.S. Navy flyer has been killed. His plane shot down. President Bush says he's pleased with the progress of the war, but Defense Secretary Cheney promises the Allied forces will not ease up. Saddam Hussein vows to fight on against the odds. From Saudi Arabia, CBS News reporter Scott Pelley says more U.S. jets have taken to the air, perhaps beginning a new wave of attacks on Iraq and Kuwait. Saddam Hussein was seen on Iraqi television a short time ago, but it is not known when or where these pictures were taken. It appears the United States has the decided military edge in the conflict, helped in part by first strike use of some 100 Tomahawk cruise missiles. World financial markets have reacted favorably, that is, to the situation. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is sharply higher. It was up some 71 points in the first 20 minutes of trading this morning.
And we want to check in with Bert Quint right now in Damascus on one of the allies that has apparently decided to stay out of the fray. We'll see if we can't get back to that report from Bert Quint in just a second.
Instead, let's check in with Ron Allen, that is, but we've been on the air a long time together here this morning, who is standing by at a naval air station in Oak Harbor, Washington. Good morning, Ron. What is the mood there this morning?
Good morning, Paula. The day is just beginning here, and there are a line of cars that are reporting for duty at the base. There are about 8,000 civilians and military personnel who staff the facility here. They are undergoing a very rigorous identification check, a visual inspection, as they approach the checkpoint there, something that is not the norm. Security is very tight. There is a lot of anxiety about what might happen. There are a lot of precautions being taken. We are in Oak Harbor on Whidbey Island, a community about 60 miles north of Seattle. It is the West Coast Training and Deployment Center for the Navy's A-6 attack bomber and the EA-6B electronic surveillance warplane. This is a Navy town of 1,700 people, and there are about 1,500 military personnel, about 10% of the community, that's been in the Gulf for several months. During that time, there has been a great deal of anxiety. The feeling, the mood has been, well, let's let something happen, either bring them home or let's get the job done. A feeling that's been prevalent throughout the country. Now that the hostilities have started, that there has been combat, there is another anxiety, a fear of what might happen in combat, especially since there have already been confirmed reports from the Pentagon that the A-6 attack bombers have been used in the first rounds of attack that have been directed at Iraq and Kuwait. That is the feeling here, the mood here. Still, there is a general feeling of great confidence and great support for the men and women who are over there. This is a town where they are used to hearing training missions of these A-6s flying overhead daily. We heard some earlier this morning as we were getting in position. Officially, they are telling us that business is going on as usual, although, of course, that is not really the case. How could it be the case with a war raging? Still, the military personnel say that everyone is calm, everyone has been prepared for this, everyone was expecting that something like this might happen. They have been through rigorous training, they know what to do. There are family support service centers open, available. There have been a number of calls through the night, and we expect that that kind of activity might increase during the day. But again, everyone has been prepared and expecting this and trying to get through it as best they can. But there is a lot of anxiety, especially with the reports that the A-6s, which are based here in this Navy town, have been used in the combat. And again, with a report of at least one Navy flyer down, people are beginning to understand what really could happen and how their lives might be directly affected. If one of those planes goes down, this entire community will feel it directly in the heart. Paula?
Thank you very much. Reporting from Oak Harbor, Washington this morning. I guess we're all coming to terms with what Ron just talked about this morning.
The reality of all of this. Bert Quint is in Damascus, Syria, and I think we have established communications. Bert, are you with me? Can you hear me?
Syrian sources said today this country's army, tough and battle-hardened by fighting in Lebanon, will not join in the attack on Kuwait and Iraq. The Syrians sent 15,000 troops to Saudi Arabia to defend the Desert Kingdom, but not, Syrian officials say, to fight an offensive war. Especially, they add, when somebody else, in this case President Bush, makes the decision to go to war. The Americans were so delighted to get Syrian President Hafez al-Assad on their side, they seem to forget that for years they've been accusing him and his country of promoting international terrorism, calling him some of the same names they now reserve for President Saddam Hussein. The Iraqi and Syrian leaders have been enemies for 2 decades, and the Syrians are happy to see Saddam in trouble. But stationing some paratroopers in Saudi Arabia as a token of support for the Saudis and the Kuwaitis, the big bankrollers of the Middle East, is one thing. Engaging in an air and ground war with a neighbor that can easily send missiles into Damascus is entirely different. Hafez al-Assad is tough, but he's shrewd too, shrewd enough to just sit back and let the others take care of his old enemy. If Syria has to go to war with anyone, it would prefer to fight Israel, and the Syrian leadership puts it this way. If Iraq succeeds in drawing Israel into the war, the cards will be reshuffled. Syrian sources spelled it out more clearly today. If Israeli planes enter Syrian airspace pursuing Iraqi aircraft or on bombing runs, Syria will be forced to fight Israel. Meanwhile, in southern Lebanon, Palestinians are preparing for a different kind of war. They have threatened to strike at American and Israeli interests anywhere in the world if the Americans attacked Iraq. These Palestinians are training for that right now. Bert Quint, CBS News, Damascus.
I want to check in with Deborah Potter, who is at the Pentagon now this morning. Good day to you, Deborah, and what news do you have for us this morning?
Well, we're being told here, Harry, that U.S. forces have now taken out some tank farms, fuel depot supplies that are supporting the Iraqi Republican Guards based in Kuwait. Now, those, as we know, are the best armed and most prepared forces in the Iraqi military. They are the target of the current B-52 carpet bombing runs that are taking place. And evidently, one of the top priorities was to pin them down, basically to make them immobile by getting rid of their fuel supplies. And there's been some success in the Kuwaiti theater of operations.
Deborah, we know that more than 1,000 missions have been flown. They speculate that as many as 2,000 may be flown in the first 24 hours of this operation. We haven't gotten much other new news since the briefing this morning with Colin Powell and Secretary of Defense Cheney. What can you tell us about the mood around the Pentagon and what kinds of optimism or pessimism seems to be permeating the atmosphere there?
Well, I would describe it as basically wait and see. There are a lot of serious and basically very tired people here at the Pentagon. They've been working a lot of long hours. So there's no jubilation, there's no cheering, clapping, backslapping going on here. There is a feeling that war always brings casualties, a knowledge here in this building that all of these early reports, these very positive reports of very few casualties, terrific success in the missions, are in fact just early reports, that things could get a lot worse, and they're bracing themselves for that. They're very happy with those early reports, obviously, but they're not banking on this being a quick and easy operation.
Deborah Potter reporting this morning from the Pentagon, and we should reiterate that while much of the news has been relatively positive this morning, that I think the main watchword that was given by Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney was a cautionary word that he seemed to really emphasize in his briefing this morning.
I must tell you that Harry and I are going to be leaving you shortly. We'll be right back after this short pause. We're back. I gave you a false warning. I thought we were going to be off the air moments ago. Right now we're going to Harold Dow, who is standing by. Good morning, Harold. We're getting...
Today, a prayer for President George Bush and Saddam Hussein.
guide their actions so that all civilians and soldiers in the Gulf area are protected from the suffering of war.
250,000 Arab Americans, Christian and Muslim, live here in the Detroit area. The largest Arab American community in the United States.
We are Americans first. We are loyal to this country. We're here because we choose to be here, because this is the land of the free.
Gary Beydoun was born in Lebanon, but now he lives here with his wife and 3 children.
We're against war.
Gary's wife, Amina.
Okay. You're a good American, you support your president. You're a good Arab, you support Saddam Hussein or whoever's over there. But when you're Arab American, it hurts deeper than it would hurt an American who is against the war. Because it's my people that are going to be killed here, it's my people that are going to be killed there.
50,000 soldiers might be killed. That's according to one analyst. But also 250,000 Iraqis. Half of them might be civilians, babies, women. For what? If you feel that he wants to talk about the FBI.
Gary is president of the local chapter of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee.
Now, I will stop by the office. Okay, I'll see you. The ADC office. Bye-bye.
An organization that battles stereotypes.
ADC, may I help you?
I fly 10,000 miles to smoke a camel.
Yeah.
And sometimes threats against Arab Americans.
He was like, this woman's gotten a lot of death threats.
We take every threat that comes in very seriously.
You know, I'd first like to know what happened to you. Maybe we...
Since the Gulf crisis, it's been getting worse.
The people that cause and threaten us, they don't know that we have our kids on the ground, possibly fighting their own cousins in Iraq.
And some Arab Americans feel their loyalty has been questioned by the FBI. Local ADC coordinator Jessica Daher.
The premise that we would know something and not speak out to the point where the FBI has to come and ask us is ridiculous. And it's insulting. You know, as an American citizen, it's insulting.
We don't even need anyone to question our loyalty.
What do you say then to some Americans who might feel that people who live in the Arab community, Arab Americans, could be terrorists or associated with terrorists?
Did you see any terrorist activity around? I mean, the answer to that is just very clear. It's just, I mean, this whole thing is hallucination.
What's the mood of this community? What's the feeling right now?
It's tense. People are scared. Are you torn? I'm talking from my heart. What is wrong? What is wrong, again, with us as a superpower, the United States of America, taking a leading role in resolving the issues of Arabs and Israelis and deal with the Palestinian question? What's wrong with that?
Well, Dan, I think now that the deadline has passed, there's going to be an increase in the U.S. and allied air activity over Saudi Arabia.
I think we're right now on the edge, on the most serious event in the entire history of the United States of America. Worse than Vietnam. I came to the Middle East. Arabs there will not accept America killing innocent people. The question again got to be asked, what's after that?
We pray for Saddam Hussein and George Bush.
We are back. I'm Connie Chung here with Charles Kuralt. We have replaced Harry Smith and Paula Zahn, who spent a good part of the day and throughout the evening and good part of the day today.
Yes, this is an exhausting experience for everybody concerned. I am impressed, Connie, with the warning of the Secretary of Defense that in spite of how well this war seems to be going so far, euphoria shouldn't set in. If there's one thing we know about modern warfare, it is that bombers can do a lot of damage, but if it's territory you're trying to gain or regain, somebody with a rifle has to go in and take it, and that phase is still ahead.
Charles, it was the danger that all of us were facing as we would pass along what seemed to be an optimistic report, a successful report of military success, and yet to hear it come from the Secretary of Defense allows us to be more cautious as well. We will take a station break now, and we will be back with our coverage of the war.
This is CBS.
When the person who doctors the family gets a cough and cold, everyone suffers.
Mom, someone took my sleeve.
I ironed it myself. Time to doctor that cough with Robitussin, because more doctors and pharmacists recommend Robitussin than any other cough medicine.
Look, Mom's feeling better. Uh-oh.
Robitussin, recommended by Dr. Mom. Which Robitussin is right for you? Ask your doctor or pharmacist. And Robitussin DM also comes in single doses that you can take anytime, anywhere.
Affordable Dentures Cookeville PC. Dr. Dan Hips.
Appearance is a vital consideration of most denture wearers. Unfortunately, gradual changes in your gum and oral bone structure may cause your dentures to recede or even protrude. Getting back that natural smile you want is now affordable with Affordable Dentures. No appointment necessary, yet we offer same-day service if in our office by 9 a.m.
Affordable Dentures Cookeville PC. Call us toll-free.
Thanks for Women Only, you've changed my life. Thanks for Women Only, you changed my life. Thanks for Women Only, you changed my life. Thanks for Women Only, you changed my life. Thanks for Women Only, you've changed my life. Thanks for Women Only, you've changed my life. Thanks for Women Only, you changed my life. Thanks for Women Only, you've changed my life.
Hey, we're having a party. Come on down and get in our 2-for-1 special. Woo!
Due to the coverage of war in the Persian Gulf, Talk of the Town will not be seen at 11. Please stay tuned now for the News Channel 5 Midday Report with Roy Hobbs.
This is the News Channel 5 Midday Report with Roy Hobbs.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Midday Report. It's Thursday, January 17th, and America is at war. Here are the latest facts as we know them. The Defense Department confirms 1 U.S. casualty so far in Operation Desert Storm, an American pilot. A British plane has also been lost. News reports an